If you've cracked or damaged the screen on your iPhone 15, then don't worry. Replacing it is easier than you might think. In this video, we'll guide you through the entire process, from safely disassembling your device to reassembling it with a brand new screen. Before going ahead with this repair, you should check and see which iPhone model you have by using Apple's iPhone identifier, which we'll link in the description below. In this guide, we're repairing the A3090 model, which is the European version. If you have one of the other models from a different region, you might notice some internal differences in the iPhone, so just be cautious and double check what the differences are before starting. Also, if you need any of the tools or parts we use in this video, we're going to link them all in the description below. Okay, let's get into the repair. So as always, the first thing you're going to want to do to start this repair is power your device off and make sure you discharge the battery below 25%. We're going to be working with tools very close to the iPhone battery, and if it's fully charged, there's a much higher risk of causing a short or it catching fire if the battery is accidentally damaged during the repair. So it might take a bit longer to wait for it to discharge, but it's worth doing to keep yourself and your device safe. Next thing you're going to want to do is remove the two Pentalobe screws at the bottom of the iPhone. Now you've removed the two Pentalobe screws, the next thing you're going to want to do is heat the iPhone. We're going to start by removing the back cover so we can disconnect the battery. It's worth noting that this isn't necessarily essential and you can replace the screen without disconnecting the battery, but we would personally recommend not skipping this step, as doing so prevents any live voltage from the battery shorting components during the screen replacement. However, if you choose to skip this step and move straight to removing the screen, we'd recommend to be especially careful not to use any metal prying tools or touch any exposed contacts in your phone. Heating the iPhone is going to loosen the adhesive and allow us to pry the screen off. We're using our forward vacuum separation machine to do this, but if you don't have one of these, you can either use a heat mat or, failing that, a hairdryer. Just make sure you're heating the screen so it's hot to the touch. That's how you'll know the adhesive is loosened enough to start prying. If you're using a heat mat, you want to be heating somewhere between 55 to 65 degrees Celsius and heating it for around 5 to 10 minutes. Now the device has been heated up, you can grab your prying tool and insert it between the frame and the back cover. If you're struggling to create an opening, you can always use a suction cup to help lift the back cover up and away from the frame. Before you start prying elsewhere on the phone, be aware that there's a delicate cable connecting the back glass to the phone, which sits right next to the volume down button, so avoid inserting your prying tool there. There's also some spring contacts at the top and bottom of the phone, so when prying in these areas, try not to pry more than 3mm to avoid your prying tool bending them. You can also use small amounts of isopropyl alcohol to help with prying and loosening the screen. Keep prying around the entire phone. Once you've pried around the entire back glass, you can lift the back glass up. It's still attached to the phone by a ribbon cable, so open it gently like a book towards the volume buttons. If there's quite a bit of resistance when lifting it up, don't force it, just pry around the entire back glass again to see if you missed any adhesive. Now it's time to disconnect the battery and disconnect the cable keeping the back cover attached to the phone. Start by removing the shield covering the back glass connector by removing the tri-point screw holding it down. We're using a magnetic mat throughout this guide to keep track of all the screws and stay organised. Now you can disconnect the back glass connector. Now you can remove the shield covering the battery connector by removing its two tri-point screws. Now you can disconnect the battery connector. With the back glass removed, it's left the rear camera exposed, so in the next steps we're going to be removing the rear camera. Again, you don't have to do this, you can skip straight to removing the screen. We're just doing this so the phone can sit flat when we remove the screen, and also removing the camera just avoids any potential damage to the camera lenses as we work on the screen. Start by removing the 3 Phillips screws securing the rear cameras. Now disconnect the 2 rear camera press connectors with a spudger. If you have an iPhone 15 from a different region, you might have an antenna cable press connected just underneath the bottom rear camera connector, which you will also need to disconnect. The camera cables route underneath the antenna cable, which makes lifting the cables out from the housing a bit tricky, so just be careful when doing so. Use a bit of IPA to loosen the cables from any adhesive holding them down. You can now remove the rear camera. So now we've removed the rear case, disconnected the battery and removed the camera, we can finally start the process of removing the screen. So if you skip disconnecting the battery, this is where you're going to want to start. Just like we did with the rear case, we've heated the iPhone again to help loosen the adhesive bonding the screen to the housing. Once the device has been heated, you'll need to apply some form of suction cup to the bottom edge of the screen. The aim of the suction cup is to separate the screen from the frame just enough so you can insert a prying tool and pry around the edge of the screen. Before you start prying, be aware that there's two delicate cables connecting the screen to the phone, one which sits just above the mute switch and another about halfway between the volume down button and the bottom of the phone, so avoid inserting your prying tool there. There's also some spring contacts around the top and bottom, so try and only insert your prying tool around 3mm in these areas. You can also use small amounts of isopropyl alcohol to help with prying and loosening the adhesive on the screen. While you're prying the screen off, if you're finding this video useful, we would really appreciate it if you could give this video a thumbs up or hit the subscribe button, as it really helps us grow the channel and keep making videos like this. When you've successfully managed to insert your prying tool into the iPhone, you can remove your suction cup and pry around the perimeter. The tool we're using evenly distributes pressure across the screen to lift the screen away from the frame, which means we don't need to pry around the perimeter that much. If you're using a manual suction cup, you'll need to do a bit more prying than us. Once you've pried around the entire screen, you can lift the screen up. It's still attached to the phone by two connectors, so open it gently like a book towards the left edge. If there's quite a bit of resistance when lifting it up, don't force it, just pry around the entire back glass again to see if you missed any adhesive. Now you can remove the two shields covering the front sensor and display connectors. Use a tri-point screwdriver to remove the two screws securing them down. Next, disconnect the front sensor connector followed by the display connector. You'll now be able to remove the screen. Next, you'll need to clean up the adhesive around the frame using a spudger or tweezers so we can apply a new waterproof adhesive before we put the new screen on. If you have an aftermarket replacement screen, the next thing you would do after cleaning the frame is take the front sensor which controls Face ID from your old screen and put it onto your new screen. We're not doing it with our screen because there's actually nothing wrong with it, and we're only using it for demonstration purposes. If you've bought a replacement screen directly from Apple, those screens come with a front sensor already attached, so you won't need to switch them. At the time of making this video, we don't yet have a video showing how to switch over the front sensor to an aftermarket screen, but if we do in the future, I'll link it in this video's description. Next, you're going to want to grab your new screen, whether that's an original or an aftermarket. And you're going to want to dry test it to make sure that everything is working correctly before properly fitting it. Plug the display connector back in and then reconnect the battery connector, then turn the phone on. You're going to want to identify any potential issues like dead pixels, color problems, or touch sensitivity. Once you're happy the screen is working as it should, you can turn the phone off, disconnect the battery, and then disconnect the screen cables. If you cleaned your frame in previous steps, you can now apply a new adhesive to the frame and go around the frame with a screwdriver or spudger to make sure the adhesive is stuck to the frame properly. Now you can reconnect the display and front sensor connectors. Now you can reapply the two shields with their tri-point screws. Next, you can lift up and remove the plastic protectors for the adhesive you applied to the frame earlier. The ear mesh might have fallen out of the screen while cleaning, so if it did, just pop it back in its place before closing the screen. Now you can slowly lower the screen back into its frame and firmly press it into place to make sure the adhesive bonds with the screen. With the screen fitted, you can flip the phone over and refit the camera. If you have an antenna cable in your phone, make sure the camera cable routes underneath the antenna cable when reassembling. Next, you're going to want to clean up around the frame so we can apply a waterproof adhesive for the back cover. You can now reconnect the battery connector and refit its shield and tri-point screw. Now you can apply the back glass adhesive to the frame. When you've applied your adhesive, you can reconnect the back glass connector. You can then refit the shield and tri-point screw. Now lift up and remove the plastic protectors for the adhesive. You can now refit the back cover by slowly lowering it into the frame and gently pressing it into place, making sure you apply pressure around the entire back cover to make sure the adhesive bonds with the back cover. Lastly, fit the 2 Pentalobe screws. If you fitted an aftermarket screen, when you turn your iPhone back on, you might get a pop-up message that says Apple are unable to verify whether the screen is genuine or not. But if you don't, you can navigate to your parts and service history in your settings, which will show that it's an unknown part. This isn't anything to worry about, the screen will work as usual. Apple just puts this message up to inform you that the part is non-genuine. If you've bought the screen directly from Apple, then you'll need to use Repair Assistant to calibrate your screen, which should pop up when you turn the phone back on. And that's it. I hope this guide was helpful. If it was, we would really appreciate it if you could like this video, click the subscribe button, or leave a comment so we can keep making guides like this in the future. Thank you.